This is Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Mitch LaFon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon, and joining me this time, it will be members of Jefferson Starship, and we will be getting not one, but two fabulous interviews. On August 9th, 2019, I had a chance to sit down, or I was scheduled to sit down with singer Cathy Richardson at the fair in Malone, New York, and to my surprise, the entire band sat in on the interview, and during the interview, each had their say. So we have David Freiberg in there, Donny Baldwin, Chris Smith, and Jude Gold. So we have the entire band sitting in on the Cathy Richardson interview. Now, I, of course, had been told I'd be interviewing Cathy and was preparing for Cathy. So it was quite something to try to get everybody involved. I did the best I could. And, of course, on the other side, I have an interview that I did back in April, earlier this year, with David Freiberg alone. It was a phoner. And Ron Nevison, former Guns N' Roses manager, is the co-host on this episode. Now, you're thinking, well, it's August. Why hasn't this interview run since April? Well, for those of you that follow the show, we know that almost immediately after Alan had, I'm just going to call it a setback, a major personal setback, and so it was difficult for me to listen to the interview and run the interview under those circumstances. But now that everything is cleared up and everybody is back to being healthy and back to being on track, I think that it is due time that we run the interview. Now, of course, Jefferson Starship were at the Franklin County Fair in Malone, New York. And big thank you, by the way, to Eric Baker for having made that possible. The show, or at least what lasted of the show, was spectacular. Hearing them do We Built the City and Jane and all those songs was great. Now, the band didn't get to play White Rabbit and some of the bigger hits just because a massive electrical or thunderstorm, whatever you want to call it, rolled in at, the band started at 8, and like at about 8:45 or 9 o'clock, this massive storm rolled in, and the entire fair had to be evacuated. So hopefully, the fair will have them back next year so they can finish. But I'm telling you, if you like the old songs and you like the way the band sounds, you will love this incarnation of Jefferson Starship. Cathy is an absolute pearl. She sings like a mother, right? We can't say it, but you know what I mean. And of course, she's good friends with Joel Hoekstra of Whitesnake, and anybody who's a friend of Joel Hoekstra is a friend of mine. So, you know what? Without further ado, I'm going to give you not one, but two interviews, one from August 2019 and one from April 2019. Here they are, the one, the only Jefferson Starship, featuring David Freiberg, Donny Baldwin, Chris Smith, Cathy Richardson, Jude Gold. Les voila. We are at the Malone, New York County Fair with Jefferson Starship and Cathy Richardson. Cathy, pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and us. Yeah, we've got everybody in the room. Not that anybody can see this, but let's talk about taking these songs, because you were, of course, in Love Janis, and now so you've done the Janis Joplin thing. You're doing the Grace Slicks thing. Talk to me about putting your voice to these very powerful singers and powerful women.
Well, you know, it's obviously a huge, incredible honor to even be associated with it. Grace and Janis are the queens of rock and roll. You know, they influenced everything that I did in my, you know, being a singer growing up and wanting to be a rock singer and fronting a band and stuff. So, it is, I think we're definitely cut from the same cloth, you know, they paved the way, and, you know, it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to sink my chords into these songs and sort of, you know, change skin a little bit, like when being on stage, being a singer, you're performing too, so you kind of lose yourself a bit. Not that I'm trying to channel Grace necessarily. Like I did definitely try to channel Janis, but that was the job. But with this, it's more like getting to be myself as much as just take everything that Grace did and it's just like this open playing field for me to just do whatever I want, really, because God knows Grace certainly did that.
You make a good Mickey, though. Also.
Oh yeah, I do. I also sing the songs, some Mickey Thomas songs and Marty Balin songs too.
Outside of Jefferson Starship, you have done your own albums. Is that something that you want to continue at this point, or are you just sort of going to focusing on this?
Well, yes. I mean, I probably will never stop writing songs and recording. But, the really cool thing is now that getting to write for Jefferson Starship. And so it is now, it's more than just a gig now. It's also a creative outlet. So that's incredibly gratifying. And I just can't wait for everybody to hear our new music because it's really good. I was just listening to some of the new mixes today and I'm like, man, this is rocking. These are good tunes. Like, I'm going to be really, really proud when this record comes out.
Well, in fact, talk to me about that new record. When do you see it coming out? And musically, do you go back and explore what the band was doing in the 60s and 70s? Or is this sort of moving forward and creating a new sound for the band?
Yeah, it's definitely moving forward, but it's, I was just saying to Jude today, like, I feel like whenever we approach it, what I really like, and I think we've achieved with this new thing, is that it sounds like it sounds modern, but it also sounds classic. So, I'm really excited about that we can touch back to the original band and the original music, but have complete freedom to be creative and write whatever kind of music we want. Grace told me that their whole thing was like, get as weird as possible, and for Jefferson Airplane. And then of course Jefferson Starship had a different sort of mode that was more commercially focused. And I don't know commercially what kind of success this record's going to have. So basically for us, it's just like writing songs that we believe in and hoping that the fans will embrace them. And so far, so good. We've been playing our song, What Are We Waiting For, live for about a year now. And it gets an amazing reaction from people. And people are like, when is it coming out? We got to get that song, So I'm just so psyched to put the whole thing out and have it be.
It's already been a year.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Let me ask David one question real quick. What sort of motivates you at this point to put out new music? Because you can put your name on the marquee and the fans are going to come out and they're going to hear the songs they want to hear, whether it's Jane or whether it's White Rabbit or whatever. Why, and I mean this respectfully, but why bother? If you know what I mean.
Well, because we're kind of doing what Jefferson Airplane did. I mean, they wrote about what was going on, and that's exactly what we're doing, for the most part. I mean, some of these songs have a story to tell, that isn't particularly happening right this second, but that's eternal. But that's what we're trying to do, and so I don't. How could you not do it?
Is it important, though, as an artist, to stay creative and not just go through the motions and plug in and go, oh, we're playing this song again?
Even if we're singing those songs, we aren't just going through the motions. Okay. I mean,
unfortunately, some bands do, though.
Yeah.
No, there's different sparks of energy in it in those songs every night. Even the ones that really should be the most commercial, every now and then they'll just go,
It's great. Cathy, you and I have a friend in common, Joel Hoekstra, who now plays with Whitesnake. He's also played with Night Ranger and he has his own Joel Hoekstra's 13. You sang on one of his albums, Undefined, I believe it was called, back in 2000. Talk to me a little bit how you got to meet Joel, and I mean, just the incredible success being with Cher and Whitesnake and Night Ranger. And
yes, well, I think Joel knows that he owes it all to me, really. I'm just kidding, of course. He's an incredible musician and a great guy, and he's, so proud of him and his success. Actually, Joel and I used to work at Pro-Am Music Store in Downers Grove, Illinois, and he taught guitar lessons, and I worked behind the counter, selling guitar strings and stuff. And that's when I first met him. And my bass player, Randy Riley, also worked at that store, and I needed a guitar player when my guitar player got picked up to go on a tour. And Joel joined my band, and that was in the 90s. And then very shortly after that, I got cast in Love Janis. And we went out to Sag Harbor, New York to do the show. And, we're having all these rehearsals, but we're not playing with the band. We haven't met the band yet. So, me and Andra, the other singer, were like, when do we get to work with the band? Because the show's opening in a couple weeks, so we really need to get these arrangements down. So we go into the rehearsal room, and I don't know who these guys were, and I mean no disrespect to them, any of them, if they're listening, but they were terrible. And so we were no, they just couldn't play, and they couldn't play together, and the music was too complicated for them or something. And
qualify a second.
And so it was like a train wreck. And we called an emergency meeting with the producer and said, we need a whole new band. And they're like, well, we can't get a whole new band. What do we do? What's the most important instrument in the band? And I said, that's like asking which wheel of the car is most important. They're all equally important, and they're like, well, if you could pick one. And I said, well, I guess the guitar player, because the Big Brother guitar parts are very intricate. And so, do you know anybody? And I said, well, yeah, I know this guy, Joel Hoekstra. He's amazing. He's my guitar player. He'll learn it all in one day, and he'll come in here and he'll blow all of your minds, which is exactly what he did. And he still does. He got on the plane. He came in. He whipped that band into shape, and we ended up going off Broadway for 2 years. And the rest is history.
It really is. Just quickly talk to me about Jefferson Tree of Liberty. Was your first vocal with the band. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Because you know that you're going to come in and there's this expectation with Mickey Thomas and Grace and stuff. Was there a fear going into that, oh my God, I'm not going to live up to this? Or was there like, no, I got this. This is easy.
Yeah, well, it is what I do. And I besides doing a lot of stage performing, I've done a ton of studio work too. So I'm like really fast in the studio, and I used to sing a lot of jingles and stuff where you're like under pressure and you gotta nail it or you're out and the next one's coming in. So I got really good at singing in the studio from just doing that for years, going just from place to place. And but the other really cool thing, the thing that surprised me about recording with these guys was, it was an album of folk songs. So it was not, it wasn't even touching on the Mickey Thomas era of the band at all. It was going even before Jefferson Airplane. It was going back before then back to the Weavers and playing and standing around a microphone, picking guitars, singing harmonies around one mic. We each had our own mic, but we were in the same room, Paul, David, and I, singing in 3-part harmony live on this record. And the way that our voices sounded together was so incredible to me. And I still feel that way about David. We all miss Paul Kantner because his timbre of his voice was so unique, and it was such a unique sound and part of the sound, the Jefferson sound. But many, many nights on stage, I get tears in my eyes with the three voices harmonizing.
Yeah. David, I want to ask you just real quick about the recording process for this new album that's coming out. Do you use all sort of the studio trickery with the Pro Tools and the fly stuff in, or do you like to go back to how it was back in the day and record it more organically, four on the floor, everybody in the room? How did you sort of come together on this album?
We kind of did it both ways, actually. We went in all in the room at the same time, and we had Pete Sears for most of it, playing bass with us at the same time, and everybody played and had at least one vocal going on. And then we went to a studio and did vocals when we had a chance, when we were in L.A. together for a while, and we had some time together. It's all been getting pieced together wherever anybody could get a chance to go into the studio and put something on it, but it was all together from the beginning, all this stuff, and all the songs, most of the songs were written, came out of us being just down in my studio and just jamming with the microphone on, and things would happen and we listened to it and songs would appear. That's basically how most of it happened. And Cathy wrote some beautiful stuff over some great lyrics. And so did Grace.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because I have a sense that music has become somewhat very similar and very sanitized, where you can just fix a vocal and fix a part, and there's not. Alan Niven, who was manager for Guns N' Roses, used to tell me that there was a perfection in the imperfection of a beat being ahead of the, or something. Has music become too safe and too sanitized?
Sometimes I'd say so. I don't think we're in danger of being called that, though.
No. Quickly talk to me about the Love Janis play. How important was that for you to have that part and do those songs? And were you a fan, or is that something that you sort of, it's just a gig and I have to do it?
Oh no, I was a fan. I was probably more of a casual fan. I always covered, did a couple Janis covers in my show with my band, and honestly, when they called me, I had no idea. I had read the book Love Janis. I had heard that the play was coming to town, and someone had invited me to go, and I was ready. I was excited to see it and learn more about her and stuff. But I didn't know her whole catalog or anything. So when they called me to come down, I actually tried to talk them out of me. I'm like, no, not me. You get the wrong person. I don't sound like Janis. I don't look like Janis. I'm not an actress. I don't do theater. I'm a rock and roll singer. And they're like, that's what we want, and I think she'll fit the costumes, and so whatever. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know about this. And they gave me a day to think about it. And I realized that I had to do it no matter what. I didn't know where it was going to take me or where it was going to lead. But I knew that fear of doing something new was not a good reason to not do something. So, God, am I grateful I did that. It totally changed my whole life. I mean, it changed me as a singer, as a musician, as a performer. It led me here to being where I am right in Jefferson Starship, which was one of my favorite bands ever growing up. It's funny when Paul came to my apartment to sing with me. It was my sort of formal audition. I had all my albums out on the floor so he could see that I had all the Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship albums. And I was a huge fan of, probably more of a Jefferson fan than a Janis fan at the time. So I feel like, I don't know, it was just, it was extremely important. I didn't know at the time how important it was going to be.
Yeah. And I'm sure you learn through the process. You train your vocal cords differently and stuff as well, because you're singing in a way that's not your way.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. I went. It was a process of several years where I really changed my voice to try to sound more like Janis, and now it's like a thing that I can kind of turn off and on. And I definitely, it's like it's in my bag of tricks now, and I definitely will pull it out. Tonight, you'll see I'll pull it out at various points of the show, and it's just a fun thing to have,
Now we've got the entire band back here, so I'll throw this question out, and whoever wants to chime in. But we are at a live show here in Malone, New York. How important is touring for a band today? I mean, in the old days, it was album sales and a video on MTV. But now it's really about being on the road, right? You want to
make any money?
Let's go over to David. Yeah.
No, I let somebody else talk, but it kind of is. I mean, you're not going to make album sales. Give me a break.
Right.
You make it millipennies from streaming audio.
Unless you have a big, giantly streamed song that's in the multiple millions.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that, because I was talking to Desmond Child, who wrote Living on a Prayer. Mm-hmm. 5 billion streams. You know how much his check was?
$1,000.
$6,000.
Wow.
For 5 billion streams.
It's fractions of a penny.
Yeah.
Per stream.
From what I know, though, I think he got a little underpaid on that one. Telling you.
Yeah, and it's funny, because we were talking on the phone about this, and he says, do they not realize I have 2 kids to put through college? Yeah. It's like, well...
Yeah, what are you supposed to do with that? I mean, it's a joke. It's really a joke.
Checks for 2 cents. I have a bunch of checks for 2 cents, 10 cents. I'm not going to cash those.
It's like that Seinfeld skit with the super terrific show where he was getting royalties for 12 cents or whatever it was.
That's typical. When I used to sing jingles, I would there would be piles of checks in my mailbox. I would be laughing every day. Oh my God. And now I'm like, if I get one check, it's for 8 cents. And I'm like, well, those were the good old days. I'll tell you what.
The first check I got that I saved was back in the 70s doing the album thing with Fool Around.
Yeah.
I've actually got it in frame. A huge song, and it's still used today, $1.37.
But that was 1970s dollars.
I couldn't believe it. Mom, I've got $1.37. That was my first check.
That's at least $10 today. I do want to talk about the jingles for a second, and being a working musician. A lot of folks think that you get into the rock business and you play Madison Square Garden and you ride around in a limousine. Talk to me about actually being a musician that has a career and being sort of in the trenches, for the lack of a better word.
You have to be dedicated, and that's all I can say. If you don't have the fortitude, you're not going to make it. I mean, some people, I don't know. I honestly don't know how it works with pop music. I probably, if I had parents who had any kind of clue how to get in the music business, maybe I would have done better more quickly. But it was literally like it was approached in my world like a blue collar job. You work hard, you slug it out, you take the crappy gigs, you open for whoever you can, you get on whatever stage you can. Anybody who wants to pay you anything to do music, you say yes. And you just don't say no to things. Like, you just do everything that you can. And, the jingles, the whole time, that was bankrolling my career, my rock and roll career, because I was able to go in the studio and make records. Mm-hmm. I was able to press and release my own records. I was, DIY through the whole entire 90s, and, still am to a degree, although I don't do my own thing nearly as much as I ever used to. But it was like I used to play 150 shows a year, and some of them really sucked, and some of them were in terrible places, and some of them I wouldn't get paid, and I'd be fighting with a cigar chomping man in the back room trying to get paid, trying to pay my band, getting the van towed while you're playing the Metro in Chicago, and the towing bill is more than the gig paid, just like that kind of stuff. It takes, you have to love it. That's all I'll say.
but as you're getting the van towed and the 8-cent check and all this stuff, were there moments where you just said, the hell with it, I'm just going to go work at Aetna, or I'm going to go to the Costco and be a cashier?
There was one time where I was in New York City and I had some meetings with record labels, And I went in and I had a meeting with this guy, and we're listening. I'm playing him certain songs, and he goes, play me What's You. And I play him the song. It's sort of this jazz blues song. And then I hit this big long note in the song, and he's got it. He's like listening. And when I get to my big note, he turns the volume down and tells me that I'm never going to make it in the music business, and that I should, and like basically like we're looking for stars, and I'm not singing it with you. And it was like he crushed my soul, and I walked out of the building and I cried and I said, I'm quitting music. I can't put myself through that anymore. I can't have some guy who doesn't know what he's talking about telling me that I'm not as good as I know that I am. And I can't go through this anymore. And then I was like, well, that's stupid. Fuck that guy. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go to a different record company, whatever. That was like right before I got cast in Love Janis. You never know what's going to happen. One of the guys that I met with that day came to see me in Love Janis, and he was going to give me a record deal, except that 9/11 happened, and that's a whole other story. But my meeting with RCA Records vice president was scheduled for September 11th, 2001. Needless to say, the meeting never happened, and But here I am with this famous RCA legacy band, Jefferson Starship.
Yeah. Well, in fact, so I'm going to throw that out to the band, and it's going to be unfair because you're in the room, but how does she stack up as a singer for you? I mean, she's fantastic, right? Who wants to answer first?
I'll answer. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. All I know is in playing with Grace and seeing some other singers when I actually came back to the band after I left, the one thing about Cathy was that she reminded me of when I first met Grace and the way Grace was. She was kind of in between trying to stay sober and get her life together and dealing with all kinds of shit. And Cathy's voice just reminded me of a younger Grace, and I got really excited because there's an attitude, there's kind of this thing that goes along with Grace's voice, of her not just being Grace Slick, but Grace Slick, the singer, and how she is on stage and what she does without really trying, because it's part of her makeup. And Cathy reminded me of that, and I just got really interested, and I said, man, this is really cool. And even though there was other singers that were around before Cathy came in, I just knew that she was the one. And that's because of Grace and being able to play with Grace. That Cathy held her own as a singer in her own way, but she had that other color that reminded me of the Grace thing, which I thought was going to be great because if it reminds me of Grace, it'll remind other people that this girl has this thing that totally relates, even though she's very much her own voice. So, it's hard to explain because, you have to experience it. Especially, you have to experience Grace in order to put yourself in asking or answering the question another singer. But if you know Grace and somebody else comes in that reminds you of Grace, then there's something there, and that was it for me. That this girl, we need to hold on to her. As feisty as she is, but so was Grace.
Yeah, and it's worked out. And I'll finish on this, and I'll throw it out to everybody again. But how important is it for the band, or how important is brand to the band? Because you could have, of course, gone out and called yourself the David somethings, or the. How important is branding? And a lot of new bands, they don't think of that. They come up with these horrible names. They don't think of T-shirt designs. And unfortunately, it is the music business, and you need to think about all of this.
Well, we honor the legacy of this band. Yeah, we have such a great song book, and we celebrate it.
That's where it goes.
Yeah.
People still want to hear the music when they were growing up, and the beauty of it is that people are showing up and they're seeing this band that has that flavor, even though there's only David that's played with the band before me and then me afterwards. With Airplane and me and with Jefferson Starship, and David with the early Jefferson Starship. People just it takes them to a place, and we make sure that we cover a little bit of each part of the history of each part of what the band was as it went through all these different changes. Plus, people love to watch us on stage because they see us having a great time. And we never know what's going to fucking happen, but we always have a great time doing what we do. And it's hard to find that in a band, to keep it together, and because you have so many different personalities. So we're just enjoying the moment, and that's really what it's about.
It really is. And on that, thank you. Thank you for everybody. It was great, and it's going to be great live. I mean, I haven't seen the band live before, but I've been studying all these YouTube videos, and there is a very palpable energy and, as he says, a fun factor. You just look at that and you go, it's important. Yeah. Well, and I was talking about going through the motions before. This band's not going through. You can see it. There's a passion there. And thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Just keeping it together, doing what we do, and the music speaks for itself. And we put ourselves to it. And there's a different flavor that works with everything that was already there at one time.
Yeah, and you're going to so badly want to interview us after you see us, too, Mitch. Oh, my God. You're going to be like, holy shit.
A lot more questions.
I do. Well, we do, but it's already been half an hour, and I know you have to get ready for the meet and greet and all that.
We have to,
we have to get in our outfits.
Do I get a picture with you before the outfits or after the outfits?
I think before is probably cooler.
All right.
And after. David's wearing his outfit.
Me too. Shorts and T-shirt. I'm from Montreal, so as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Merci. Au revoir. Bientôt.
À la prochaine, as we say. There we go. Perfect.
Now back to Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon.
We are speaking with the Jefferson Starship's David Freiberg, and joining me on the line is a co-host, Alan Niven. Alan, we don't do a lot of interviews together. We usually do them separate, but pleasure to have you here. And David, absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, wonderful to talk to you and Alan. This will be great.
What
shall we talk about?
Well, I'll tell you, David. Most of the time, I prefer to let Mitch do the interviews. He's an expert at it, and people are very comfortable with him because he is a master at his craft. But every now and then he'll he'll be running through prospective interviews, and every now and then I'll go, I really would love to talk to that guy. And when your name came up, it just set off fireworks in my head. And, let me get a little bit of fanboy out of the way here.
Okay.
There you are in a band called Quicksilver. Well, I was a little nipper in an English boarding school, and you make a record called Happy Trails, which I will tell you is still one of my favorite all-time albums. And to give it some sort of perspective there, my favorite Who album is called Live at Leeds. I will tell you, David, there would be no Live at Leeds if there wasn't a Happy Trails before it. And that is one of the most splendid groove and guitar records in my collection. I still pull it out and play it for people and go, you have got to know this record. Absolutely wonderful. Then you go on and, of course I remember as a little kid rolling up my first joint and wishing that I could one day maybe go to America, and I'm listening to Have Another Hit of Fresh California Sunshine. Then comes along a record, and it's, to me, the first solo record that was powerful as a solo statement, and that was, of course, the David Crosby record that you're a part of. I mean, Laughing is still one of my all-time favorite tracks, and What Are Their Names is still...
Oh, what are the names?
Yeah, that's still an absolutely relevant statement, and I wish people were making more statements like that today.
I think Crosby's still doing that.
Yeah. Well, personally, David, just thank you. You definitely were an influence and an inspiration to me, and I can blame you for all the weird things that went on in my life, like GNR and so on and so forth. But what a splendid
rolling
career.
Up that joint in in boarding school.
Now, David, what you might not be aware is Alan used to manage Guns N' Roses, and then actually at the same time, managed Great White. So he's been in the business for many years and has this expertise, and yet for like all of us, it starts somewhere, and for him, it was Quicksilver, and also Jefferson Starship and Jefferson Airplane and all that wonderful stuff. So before we start looking back, let's start sort of looking forward in the sense of the band is touring. You consistently tour. You've got dates that I can see lined up all the way through September. At this stage of the game, what sort of gets you motivated to get out of bed and say, yeah, I got to get on a stage. I got to deliver these songs. Fans want to hear them. Why not just say, it's been a good life. I'm just going to stay in California and stare out at the sunshine. And what gets you out there? Is it artistic, the artistic endeavor, or is it like down to, well, listen, I got to pay the rent. So,
Oh, wow. You know what? It's really wanting to play with this bunch of people, the people that are in the band right now. It just kept it. It's a long story. Falling back into, because I had, right around when I left Starship, when it was just, they dropped the Jefferson. And, I left shortly after Paul Kantner did. And, and then right before they did We Built the City and Nothing's Going to Stop Us Now and all those big hits. It had stopped being a whole lot of fun to be there for me because the creative, the group creation wasn't there anymore. I mean, we had a bunch of really good players, and Mickey Thomas was a great singer, and Grace Slick was wonderful, and everybody was doing really well. But nobody in the band was writing any of the songs. They were all from outside people, And I mean, We Built the City was Bernie Taupin, and and I don't know. So and they said, well, you weren't doing very much. You could leave, and I said, I sure could. It was kind of a mutual agreement on that. And I said, okay, you guys go right on ahead. And I just kind of buried my nose in a Mac computer for a little while and did crazy things like sequence Peter and the Wolf, the entire orchestra score, and recite it myself so I could play it for my grandkids. And I went back and played with Gary Duncan from Quicksilver for a little while and met my wife and did all that. And almost 20 years later, after, and I built a studio in the house and helped people record and had a pretty good time. Didn't get out of music by any chance, and actually was joined a chorus and sang Beethoven's Ninth. did things that were just unlike anything that I had been doing. And Paul had reformed Jefferson Starship in the 90s, and right around 2004, I think it was, he said, "Do you want to come and sit in?" And he was playing in Marin County, and I went and sat in with him for 2 songs, and it was fun. I just had a great time. Everybody in the band was great. And Prairie Prince was playing drums, and Slick Aguilar was playing guitar, and it was just wonderful. And he said, "Do you want to come on down to another gig?" And I did that. And he said, "How about these couple in New York?" And so, and before I knew it, I was in the band, and I was having fun, and it just kept on going like that. And I went through that, starting about 2005 all the way up till Paul passed away. The members changed, and gradually it turned into the people that are in the band now. This exact band was playing with Paul for the last 5 years, and Chris, the keyboard player, had joined him in '98, so he's been playing with them for over 20 years. He's been in Jefferson Starship, and then Cathy Richardson came along and to do the female vocals, and well, I fell in love with her when she was playing with Big Brother and she was singing Janis. And when we found out that, I met her and we started talking, and she said she was an old Jefferson Starship fan when she was a teenager. She had all this stuff up on the walls, and it come out to see all our gigs, and she loved all the stuff, and she knew every song. And when this Diana Mangano, our singer, decided she had enough of running around it and wanted to do something else, we asked Cathy, and she came in and probably knew all of Paul's weird songs and everything. It was just tremendous. And so ever since then, it's just kind of got tighter and tighter and tighter. And the band, I don't know, it just seemed to be what I really look forward to doing, is to get out there and play with these people.
I saw you last year in Phoenix. And,
Phoenix?
A place called BLK. And the band were incredibly present and really strong, and it was really good. It's interesting because when I remember you being on Blows Against the Empire, I think, and as an old fan of Jefferson Airplane, that to me was the last cool record, and it kind of got into Hitsville at some point and lost that peculiar cerebral organic quality that was so fascinating to me when I was very young and taking acid.
The old days. But let me just get back to the modern time here for a second. So we have two perspectives going. I'm going to hit you more with the modern stuff, and Alan was there in the day. He bought the albums. He went and got those vinyls, so he knows that, But the last album, Jefferson's Tree of Liberty.
Alan's going to dose me, right? Okay.
He's
Liberty.
Well, he's going to know. But Jefferson's Tree of Liberty came out in 2008. You, of course, played on that. There has been no new album since then. What is the importance for you of making new music? Is it something that you still strive for artistically, or is it really, you know what, fans want to hear the 15 greatest hits? Let's just go give them the 15 greatest hits and a fun night. And, we've made 50 years of music. It's enough. Does it still burn inside of you to make new music, or is it like, been there, done that?
Funny you should mention that.
Okay. Good.
We are in the midst of getting some new music out. We have one tune done, and four we're almost done, and we're in the process of figuring out how we're going to get it all mixed. But it's mostly finished now. And actually, we've been for probably the last 6 months, we've been playing at least one of the new tunes in our set.
Okay,
so saying, I know when you got in your cars and coming here, you say, Cathy will say, I know. You're saying to yourself, gee, I hope they don't play anything new. And so here's a new song for you. But it's been going, and it relates to current events quite a bit.
And before I defer to Alan, let me ask you about this. And I know you were just about to say something, but when you make a new song like this one, do you look back over the 50 years and say, we have a sound and we need to capture that? Or is it you throw caution to the wind and say, we're going to try something new. We're going to be Jefferson Starship 2019. How do you sort of approach the sound of new music? We
approach it as we're all kind of interested in keeping the feeling alive, and also the intentions alive. What we want to do. We want it to be relevant to what people are doing now. What our problems are. Just like it was, we were back in the 60s, and the problems aren't that different. But the first song is called "What Are We Waiting For?" and it's just saying, here we are, all this weird stuff is going down. Why can't we all talk to each other instead of yelling at each other, more or less? that's not exact. Those are not the lyrics, but that's the idea. Is we've got to get together, or else terrible things will happen.
Yeah,
that's basically the point. Yeah.
50 years.
But it's a really nice song, and it's been getting pretty. Considering it's a new song when people are coming, and they want to hear "We Built This City" and that stuff, and and White Rabbit, and we'll give them this, and they've been getting very positive reactions to it.
That's great.
So
now
we're the other songs are approximately the same, except for one that there's also one that Marty wrote. While he was in and out of Paul's Jefferson Starship. He'd come in, come out, and he wrote this with Chris Smith, our keyboard player, and he wrote one tune called "Don't Be Sad Anymore," and that's going to be in there too. So,
and I'm going to step back for a second here, and I'm going to let Alan take over. Alan, the floor is yours.
Well, David, that is really heartening and encouraging for an old English dog to hear, because part of the seduction of the music of my youth was its spirit, and that it stood for something. I think if there is one song I wish I had written, I'd have to say it's Imagine. And I am delighted that you have a drive to express a commentary on what you see around you socially, because I think that's a really, really essential part of the musical experience. And what I hear today is really disappointing in contemporary music. And the other thing is I thought we put a lot of these monsters away in the 60s, but, it seems like the present political
Here they come
climate,
again, yeah.
Yeah, here they come again. And my God, we've got to do the work again. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, David, but, there's a lot of old hippies who have gotten married, chased the material, raised their kids, paid for them to go through college, paid off the 2 BMWs. You know what, guys? Be hippies again. Start being more politically active. And musicians from that period, restoke the fire.
Yeah. Well, as
agree.
Paul said, I mean, we had a couple of tours. Since Paul passed away, the first couple of years, we were as Paul's as one of Paul's lyrics is "Carry the Fire." And so we've been trying to carry the fire, as it were.
Good for you. Good for you. I love that. That's an encouraging thing for an old man to hear on a Monday morning.
On a Monday morning, yeah. Let me just we've mentioned Paul a few times, sort of as an aside or of a discussion, but let's put him in the center of the focus for a second. Talk to me a little bit about Paul and what did he mean to you on a professional level, but also on a personal level. Because I know that when he passed away, you went to his family and you said, listen, do you mind if we continue with the band? There was a respect for him, not like, oh, well, we're just going to get on with it, which would have been sort of like, oh, there was an incredible respect for him. Talk to me about his contribution, both professionally and personally to you.
Well, actually, it was kind of almost the other way around. The family said, would you continue the band? At his funeral, they asked, would you please continue the band? And we were thinking about asking if let's keep it going because towards the end, I mean, Paul was so was in pretty bad shape, but he never would want to quit performing, and so we kept almost half the gigs we'd play. Paul would be in the hospital or something, and we'd go out and play them without him. And so we were very used to playing without Paul, but we all respected him so much, and for me personally, I mean, I probably met Paul at the end of, I don't know, it's probably early 1963, probably, when I was a folk singer, and I just happened to, and he was still a student. I think he was going to San Jose State, and my little group, I sang with a girl named Michaela, and we played at the folk house down in San Jose, and he was hanging out there, and I ended up staying over at his apartment, because we played there for 2 nights, I think. And we sat up all night playing banjos and picking guitars and smoking weed, and we were fast friends from then. And when I left that girl, the first place I went was back to Paul's in San Jose, and we decided we would see what we could do about being a folk duo or something. And I went to Venice, moved down to LA to see if we could get into the the folk scene, but the folk scene was Roger McGuinn sitting in front of the Troubadour playing Beatles songs, and the Byrds were just about to happen. So it was going to turn into something else very quickly. So
really,
but we had quite a few adventures anyway. So I mean, Paul was my oldest friend in the world, probably.
Wow.
When he passed away. So
that must have been a really exciting period, because the boundaries of what you couldn't do were about to go.
Yeah, we had a place on the beach in Venice, California, and Crosby would come by all the time. And he was before the Byrds, but he was, and then the Byrds were forming. So it was exciting.
Have you memorialized this? Are you going to put this down so that we can pick it up as a book? Enjoy the adventure that you had?
If I wasn't such a lazy writer, I probably would. I guess. There were. Sometimes I feel like I'm the Forrest Gump of rock and roll or something. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time. I don't know. But
well, no, I think that's partially choice too, David, because you were a part of significant records and significant bands. I mean, that's good choice.
It was definitely. I was actually where I wanted to be. I was very. Yeah, it's true. I wasn't just tossed around by fate like that, but yeah, it was good to be in the right place. So San Francisco in 1965 was a pretty good place to be.
Well, I unfortunately wouldn't know, but let me ask you about times, places and time. In '84, let me check. Let me get my note out here.
84.
1984, if I can just, here we go. Nuclear Furniture, there we go. Nuclear Furniture comes out. It is the last album that you are a part of until 2008. What was going on at the time with the band where some of you decided, okay, it's time. We need to walk away. And also, it was produced by Ron Nevison, who we recently interviewed, UFO, Kiss, and all these other bands. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, also the experience of working with Ron, but what was it at that point in '84 after?
He also produced Freedom at Point Zero, I believe, too. So.
Yeah, what a great. Okay, well, in fact, let's start there. What is it about Ron Nevison? Because when you look at the stuff he's done with UFO and you look at some of the stuff he's done with other bands, he really brought out the best in bands, and he got them to a level where maybe another producer wouldn't have gotten him. When you're working on him with Nuclear Furniture and the other album, what was he doing in studio where you just went, oh, that's smart. That is smart. Good for him. What was he like to work with?
He was interesting to work with. He was pretty strange. I mean, there was a bunch of cocaine going around at the first during Freedom at Point Zero. I know that I never was a big fan of, but he managed. I don't know, whatever was handled, however he handled everything. He considering he did a really nice job on Freedom at Point Zero, and my song Jane came out really great. And I don't know whether, a lot of that was just having Mickey Thomas to sing it, I'm sure. But
yeah, it's funny how cocaine derails everything, isn't it, David? Just that stuff is just poison. Completely derails bands, minds, marriages, friendships.
I just found out, it just seems to be people, you take one hit and that felt good, and then everything else, every other hit was trying to find what felt good about the first one, and you never found it again. That was my experience. So I just stopped.
Yeah, we went from the doors of perception into the cupboards of no comprehension, I think.
That's
Yeah,
actually a good song title right there. But okay, since you mentioned Freedom at Point Zero, let me ask you about that. That is the first one that comes out in '79. Mickey Thomas, first time with you, and then you've got Ainsley Dunbar, who had just left Journey, and eventually in '87 he does that album with Whitesnake, the Whitesnake '87 album. To me, completely underrated as a player. I mean, he's one of these guys who goes from band to band to band, and yet, wow, what a hitter. I mean, he knows how to hit. But talk to me about that, having Mickey come in and finally having this singer show up and take over and sort of give Starship or Jefferson Starship sort of a 2.0 kind of version of it. Talk to me about bringing in Mickey and how did you get him? Was it an audition? Was it like you saw him somewhere and you went, oh, he's too good. We got to get him. What was that? Tell me that story.
No, actually, what happened? Let's see. In 1978, we were touring. We were in Europe touring the Earth album, I guess, with Jefferson Starship, and we got to one point. We were playing in Germany at Lorelei, and Grace was sick and couldn't show up for the gig. You know, she was throwing. She had diarrhea and was throwing up, and you know when you're just coming out of both ends, you know, it's no time to go on the stage. And so, and Paul wouldn't play without her, even though we had Marty and me and him, and we could have done a whole pile of songs. And it was one of these festivals where there were more people advertised than there actually showed up for it. It's a beautiful outdoor amphitheater up on the hill above the Rhine River above the Lorelei Rock, where the the famous siren lured all the sailors to their deaths on the rocks. So it was kind of prophetic. However, so we didn't play, and the audience rioted and actually started a bonfire and burnt the whole thing down. And then the next gig was in Hamburg, and Grace got blitzed and left the band after that. And there we were in Europe, and we ended up playing a Nebworth festival without Grace. And then we got back, and then Marty left. And so we were left with no Marty, no Grace. What are we going to do? Shall we keep going? And yes, we decided to keep going. And John Barbada went and had a car wreck and was out of commission for almost a year or so. So we got Ainsley. So we figured we needed a new singer, and so I had written Jane, and we just started, had tryouts. We had a bunch of people come in and play with us, and it kind of seemed like the person that would sing Jane the best would probably get the gig, and that ended up being Mickey Thomas.
That's great. And by the way, Alan, do you know how you are connected to the album Freedom at Point Zero? You both share a connection to this one.
Oh, we do?
Yes, you do. The person that worked on your Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction, Mike Klink, was the engineer on this album.
Well,
Mike Klink was the second. Yeah.
Yes. See, you have both worked with Mr. Klink over the years, so there you go.
So we have one division of one degree of division.
Separation.
One degree of separation, but okay. So let me ask you this then, because Mickey is in the band, and in '84 you do that album, and then you move on, and then in 1985 the band reemerges as Starship, and they do We Built This City and Sarah, and it's exceptionally commercial, very sugary sweet. They do the videos. It's pop like pop wouldn't believe, which to me sort of seems to be the antithesis of what Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship was all about. What was that like when you first see the video or hear the song and you go, really? Really? Okay. Was that a shock? Was that like, okay, well, hey, good for them. How did you take that song, album?
Well, I still had a piece of that album anyway because I left and they decided that, well, okay, you've been here a long time, you really probably should have something. I said, yeah, okay, I'll take that. And so I was happy for the success of it, but I don't know, the videos got out of hand. I thought you got a bunch of people that aren't actors trying to be actors.
It was an interesting.
I don't agree that "We Built This City" is the worst song ever written, though, or whatever that was.
No, that would be a Kiss song.
That's not fun. No, but no, actually, listen, I'll be perfectly frank. I like "We Built This City." I think it's a fun song, and I had a best friend at the time in high school called Sarah. So I don't want to say we teased her about the song, but you know, it was part of our sort of vernacular, if you want.
Sarah is a beautiful song. That is really a nice song.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I like that. I really liked it before I left. I had no problems with Sarah. I thought that was a beautiful song, written by Peter and Ina Wolf. Yeah. And that was the other thing we were talking about, Ron Nevison. When Ron Nevison came back to do the second album with us, he brought Peter Wolf with him, who kind of, I don't know, I don't guess he got production, but did he get production credit on Nuclear Furniture?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yes, he did.
Because he certainly should have, because he played half the stuff of everybody's on there. He's a fantastic keyboard player.
Yep, and just real quick for my listeners that are more into the hard rock, heavy metal thing, the Knee Deep and the hoopla that has "We Built the City" and Sarah also includes backing vocals by the one, the only, Kevin Dubrow of Quiet Riot. So that's an interesting little side note that I didn't even know until I started doing all this research. Alan, I'll defer over to you.
That's the first time I heard of it too.
Yeah, he did. He did additional vocals on "Rock Myself to Sleep" and a couple others. But yeah, it's a fun little side note. But Alan, we are at 30 minutes. I will let you ride this one home. And just real quick, an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And I'll let Alan get in the last couple of questions. And David, just thank you for your time today. But Alan, c'est à vous.
It's a pleasure, Mitch. Okay.
Yes.
Well, David, I really don't have any further questions, but I would reiterate again that you were a part of records and bands that had a tremendous impact on me as a nipper, as a little kid, and quite simply, thank you. I wouldn't be talking to you. I may well not have taken the path I had in life, but for things you were involved in. I was at that age where I found it very interesting that people seemed to be making more sense on record than the people who were in my family or the people who were in my school or the people who were in my social group. And I found myself moving far more to an outlook and a consciousness that came from vinyl rather than what was around me. So thank you for what you contributed to that. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being able to see it. Because sometimes the people that were doing it didn't see it as well as they should have.
Here we are today. You know, old hippies of the world, reunite. Let's try and sort this out a little bit and get a little bit, and get some more communication. Awesome, David. Awesome.
Very awesome. And
Can't
just
wait for you to hear our new stuff.
Oh, I can't wait. And please, if you don't mind giving us a sneak peek or a preview, would be more than appreciative. You can either send it over to Eric and he can send it to us, or I can give you my contact. But real quick, let's just remind the folks, JeffersonStarship.com is where you will find all the tour dates. The band, it is unbelievable. I'm just scrolling through these tour dates and I go, doesn't he rest? Doesn't he rest? All the way through September so far. There will be, of course, more coming. David, merci.
There are more.
Yeah.
There are more that are. Sure.
Oh, one question.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did you take the trip down to New Zealand, and had you been there before, and what did you think of the place? Did you get much time to see it?
We didn't get much time to see it, much to our chagrin, but we fell in love with the place, actually.
Because that's actually where I was born.
Well, we kind of fell in love with Toto also as well, because those guys are great. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a beautiful place. All the people were so real. And their reaction to the reaction in New Zealand to the horrible thing that happened down there, the crazy mass murderer,
right,
that went off in the mosque.
Yeah.
You know what, David? You might want
to know how you should react to something like that. New Zealand did it perfectly. My God.
Yeah. You know what? If you've not spent any time down there, put it in the bucket list to get a week or 10 days down there. I think you'll find it time well spent, and you'll really thoroughly enjoy it. I look at the place as a little bit like it's a little bit in the past, where we're 2019, unfortunately here. I think in New Zealand it's still maybe about 1978.
Which of course was the prime years for Kiss, so that actually would be good to go back to.
Oh, I opened the door.
You did, but David, absolute pleasure, and hopefully you will get up to my part of the world here in Montreal, and I know if you get down to Arizona, Alan will be front and center because he just loves the band and would love to probably get it. In fact, Alan, I'll ask you, would you love to get a chance to go meet David and say hello in person?
Oh, that would be a privilege and a pleasure.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm sure we'll get to Phoenix again.
Yep.
Well, if you do, please give me a heads up, because I would love to come down and say hello in person.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be it's going to be a great show, because the new singer, my Lord, she is dropped from heaven. I mean, the voice. I mean, to try to replace Grace or any of the singers you've had is no easy feat, and yet she made it an easy feat. So,
yeah. Actually, one of the new songs that we got coming out will have been, most of the lyrics will have been written by Cathy and Grace. So there's a tidbit for you.
Oh wow, that's a nice combination. Anyway, we've said goodbye about 5 times. This time let's make it real. Here is but David, merci beaucoup, as we say in Montreal. Alan, thank you for joining me on this one, and there you go.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Rock Talk.